Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome back to Tekpon. Today our guest is Andrew, the CMO of Pedal. Hello.
Hey, Christian, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's very nice to meet you. Please tell us, what is Pedal?
Sure thing. So Paddle, almost said the name wrong there, didn't I? Paddle is a complete payments infrastructure for SaaS companies. So if you're trying to sell online, probably certainly you serving many companies across the globe. If you're in a PLG motion where you've got probably a lower price point selling via a product experience, there's lots of complexities with that. And so we help companies who are doing that to handle all of their subscription, all of their tax compliance, all of the billing, all of the payments, and we take all of that complexity away to allow them to scale to sell anywhere in the world without any legal liability. And we also recently acquired another company called ProfitWell, which means we've got a very strong SaaS metrics platform, a very good retention platform, and also the leading pricing strategy team in the SaaS market.
And what did you say is the biggest problem that you're solving for SaaS companies?
Sure. So when a SaaS founder starts, and I've been a SaaS founder in my past before selling that business, your whole company is set up around an insight of where the market is going or something new that needs to be added into the market. And really what you want to be doing is spending all of your time on understanding the customer, building the product, and then building a team to enable more customer understanding and more product to be built. And yet there's all of this other admin that gets in the way. And, we've seen many different stages as the industry has evolved, where there are now shoulders of giants that we stand on. I think of AWS as one of those key pieces, where now instead of having to go to Best Buy and buy servers and racks and cables, we just put a credit card in, load up and go. And the same is happening across many of the software tools we use. And so the main problem we solve is that we're actually taking all of that admin burden, legal liability, and headache off the mind of a SaaS founder who wants to focus on team, customer, and product, and making sure that they can focus their time on that and taking away these other headaches that really get in the way of their journey to scale.
That's great. And what are the top features that your customers love?
I mean, when you scale globally, there's a whole bunch of challenges that you face. And we've got about 3,000 customers on our core billing platform, and then about 30,000 more on the metrics product and several hundred on the retention product and the pricing product. So it really depends on those different products. But fundamentally, this whole idea of doing it for you is key to our product vision. So we don't want to be a set of tools that help you do your job a bit better. We want to remove that job off your plate completely. So we call that doing it for you. And I think that's probably the most fundamental thing that our customers love. It's that when they use Paddle, all of the problems of calculating local tax in every region when you start hitting the thresholds and remitting that and filling in local language tax returns and all that stuff just disappears. It's not your problem anymore. So that's probably our most loved kind of capability.
Awesome. And can you share with us some of your use cases?
Yeah, so when we think about that core billing infrastructure, there are really three moments in a company's history where they look at ripping and replacing that. Number one is the first time on the first dollar of revenue when people are initially setting out to transact with their customers. And sometimes that's almost, in beta or kind of pre-product almost. And certainly there's a huge number of our customers that we start at that point where they just want to start accepting payments from their customers. The second piece is normally somewhere between 3 and 6 million ARR, where a business is now starting to hit tax thresholds in different regions. And so knows that they're probably using different tools for subscription management and for their payment processing and for their tax compliance or calculation. And they're starting to get those letters saying you're hitting tax thresholds in these regions. And that's the second moment where we take that pain away and people actually invest in replatforming. And the third one is a bit later stage, often beyond 20, 30 million ARR, where businesses are now going into late stage financing or thinking towards exit and IPO, and then suddenly having a single source of truth of your finance, making sure that single stack is risk-free and making sure your numbers all add up correctly becomes really paramount. And that's often where people try to clear house and do another billing stack replacement. So those are three of the points in that journey of scale that founders come to us to take over those problems.
Great. And I think that there are a lot more, but what is the pricing for Pedal?
So it's 5% and 50 cents. Is our standard pricing. And if you've got lots of volume, then we're very happy to have conversations over whether there's any change to that. We try and be really transparent over that. It's on our site. And for any customers that want to engage in the conversation, and certainly if you're over a few million ARR, they generally do, we go into a pricing and an ROI kind of calculation with our data and with the customer's data so that they can see how much this costs versus their existing stack. Because this is one of those challenges where if you're paying it probably through a couple of staff engineers' salaries and accountant salaries and a few bits of software, it's very hard to see what that cost adds up to. But we know from all of our thousands of customers we worked with, once you get through a few million of ARR, that is under the price you'll be paying through all of these other different places. It just won't show up in your statements. It won't show up in your stack of invoices because it goes to many people. So that's our pricing model. And then retain is priced on a performance basis. So if we save you revenue in terms of churn reduction, then we take a portion of that, and we normally do a trial to see how much we can save before we decide a price. And then price intelligently is a kind of an annualized contract based on the number of sprints we're doing to advise you on your pricing. And then finally, the metrics product that you can go to and sign up on ProfitWell.com is completely free, and that will be free forever. So you can just plug in and get the value straight away.
That's so smart. And why did you choose to make the product free, the metrics?
So. And Patrick and Peter and the team have talked quite openly about this, but when they launched that product, and this was back several years ago, there were very few SaaS metrics platforms on the market, and so they thought this was a market they could go and charge for. And one thing they're very good at is customer development and customer discovery, and so Patrick and a bunch of their team spent lots of time with customers working through how much people would be willing to pay. That was, willingness to pay is a core part of their pricing research that they've done for many companies. And the revelation they had was that this was something important, but that it was something that was really hard to charge for. And the market was suddenly being entered by other competitors. And you'll know several of them. And so they made a really strong and long-term strategic decision, which was rather than shrink the size of the market by pricing and making sure they then competed with everybody else, why not make it a free product, take as much of the market as possible? And they've got 10x the volume of anyone else in the market. Why don't we make it free and fund it through our other products? And then this is our data set that becomes a core and a heartbeat of our company valuation. And they executed that superbly.
Oh, and I think you're trying to adopt this strategy and this mindset to everything now, and thinking of ways to reproduce it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we look at a whole range of businesses across the market, we are seeing this shift of value towards the end customer. And product-led growth is a piece of that, where actually it's the individual user who's buying the product and they're getting the value from the product. But we're also seeing, whether it's in a marketing environment, the website grader from HubSpot was an early example, but we're seeing value being pushed closer and closer to the customer. We see many product-led businesses actually inviting trial before they've even asked for your email. So you can get that product experience before you've handed over even an email address, let alone a cost, let alone a price. So I do think that's a broad shift we are seeing, that as the market becomes more and more competitive, distribution becomes more and more paramount. And if distribution is paramount, then you've got to find ways of differentiating and moving the value, in a lower price or in a kind of freemium type offering or in a free offering closer to the customer is one way of doing that.
Thank you so much for explaining this. It was great. And what are the current integrations apart from ProfitWell?
Yeah, I mean, so the ProfitWell metrics product integrates with a bunch of the main metrics platforms, the main billing platforms. And then outside of that, Paddle itself, we actually this month are announcing a range of integrations, including much better APIs to integrate with anyone who wants to integrate us. And those integrations will include Salesforce and NetSuite, who are probably our most requested integrations, especially as we go and sell into mid-market.
Happy for you. Awesome. And can you share with us some examples of happy customers?
Yeah, I mean, you can go on our site and see a whole bunch of interesting customers. I think one thing that's fascinating about Paddle is we really do have customers from all different walks of life. This business started off actually selling into customers that were from a B2C background, and then Mac apps and things like that, and then walked into the B2C world and has gradually gone up market. So customers of ours would include MacPaw, which is often selling into consumers, people like Framer, for e-commerce, Tailwind, and also some bigger names like Blue Jeans, which is the voice and video service behind Verizon. So there's a whole bunch there, and you can look at some of those case studies on our site.
How do you differentiate from your competitors?
I mean, that phrase, do it for you, is really the key differentiation. And I'm strongly of the view that as you differentiate, one of the most powerful methods of differentiation is a different point of view. And we have a strongly different point of view to the main ways of doing business in this market, which is, the normal way that many founders, particularly if you're in a US context, so you've got a large domestic market, so the international problems aren't so big, is you go to Stripe and you set up that. And then you maybe go to Recurly or ChargeBee or some of your subscription management. You set up that. And then as you scale, you maybe go to Avalara or some other tax calculation software and go to that. And then when you hit the levels of needing to look at fraud prevention, you go to another, a fraud provider. And all of those systems really make up this piecemeal stack that's what we see as our difference. We combine all of that together, so you've got one partner, you've got one person to trust, one person to build a relationship with, one single source of truth, and we carry all of the risk of building that all together, vertically integrating all of that. So for us, it's not really a competitive bake-off. It's more of a case of saying, if payments are a core part of your business model, as their customer's business model, then probably they do want to own that themselves. But if some other form of software is what you're selling and payments are part of the product experience, but they're not a way that you are monetizing in terms of inside the product, then Paddle would probably be perfect for you if you're software, and that's our differentiation.
And can you please tell us the story of the company, the story of Paddle, how it started, and the idea?
Yeah, so Christian, our CEO, is fantastic and also fantastically smart. And so I think he was actually a Peter Thiel fellow. So he dropped out of school super early and had built a software business on the side to a few million of ARR. And the biggest problem he faced when doing that was how he invoiced customers and the actual payments piece of his own software company. And so it was feeling that problem and recognizing that there are a bunch of people in his community and in his network who are also building software companies and facing those problems, was really the insight that led to Paddle being founded. And so he joined up with, I think, one of his schoolmates at that point, Harrison Rose, the co-founder, and they built Paddle together, raised some early money, and built a product to go and solve those early problems. And it's really built and grown very fast from there.
Awesome, nice story. And how much have you raised until now?
Goodness me, so quite a lot. I think it's about near on 300 million overall. And we raised our Series D,
right?
last year. We raised our Series D of a couple of $100 million, and we used that also to partly fund the purchase of ProfitWell. So yeah, there's been some big raises, and that's testament really to the economics of our business, and also the strong team that's building it forwards.
Did you first thought we need to buy ProfitWell and afterwards we need to raise the money to do that, or did you raise the money first and afterwards thought that we may buy ProfitWell?
Yeah, great question. So we were thinking of raising anyway, but the plan to buy ProfitWell was really the trigger point for the size of that raise. And so, yeah, we actually went to market, went to different banks, went to different funds with that proposition that we would raise a significantly greater amount of money than we needed as an independent business because we wanted to go and do that M&A. So yeah, it was an embedded part of the process.
But why did you want to buy ProfitWell? Talk about it.
Yeah, so I think we have a lot of respect for the founding team and the entire team at ProfitWell and what they did on a few fronts. Firstly, the brand that they've built, particularly in the US market, is just really, really strong. The way they've been helpful to thousands of software businesses. Myself, when in my previous business, I knew of ProfitWell. I can remember pinging them emails on pricing questions, and they were always responding fast. So they really built a strong brand. And their products are serving very similar companies, but we had almost no product overlap. So whereas we are dealing with this core billing engine and a lot of the tax issues there, they have this retention product that sat alongside it, a metrics product that filled a gap in our own reporting that we knew we needed to fill somehow, and this pricing piece. And so together, we have this combined vision of helping SaaS founders fulfill their mission by operating and growing their companies automatically. And really, we helped fill in each other's pieces of that combined vision. And obviously, there's more still to build out that we're working on, but that was really part of the insight that led to that.
It makes sense. It makes sense. And how big is the team right now? Are you combining teams or are you leaving them separate?
Yeah, we fully combined the teams already. So we did that pretty quickly. And I think that was wise to do. So we're around, I think, 340 staff. And that's with the combined teams and our hiring that's been happening ongoing. And all of our teams, and my marketing team includes BDRs and our DG teams, and our brand teams, and creative teams, and product marketing that have been combined across both of those businesses. Now, Paddle was the larger business, and so a lot of those teams were, the ProfitWell teams were subsumed in, but several of our leaders across the business are from the ProfitWell side, and I think we're really enjoying working through that joint leadership journey as we combine the two companies and now don't kind of assimilate ProfitWell into Paddle or Paddle into ProfitWell, but create a new one Paddle going forwards based on the best of both of those parts.
And what are the things that changed that you noticed after the acquisition?
Oh, I mean, everything changes after an acquisition. In my prior role, we went through 5 acquisitions in 2 years. And so, I've seen that journey happen many times, and it's tough. There's a lot of unspoken culture that sits within the fabric of the organization that is normal for anyone who's in that culture until you suddenly put it inside another company. And suddenly there's lots of conversations that need to happen about why you do this and why you do that. And this is our background of what we found worked. And this is your background. And how can we come together and make those things work? And definitions and vocabulary are different as well. The way we report on things, the way that we value different things in the business are different. Now, we both have pretty similar value systems, but there are also differences within those value systems that then need conversations. So I think, there have been a huge number of strengths of coming together. Paddle was a more mature business, is a more mature business in its scale, and therefore had some things with better process. ProfitWell strategically was just extremely strong in how they executed, and their speed of execution was very strong. And then in terms of the teams, the Faku, who was the kind of CTO of ProfitWell, has come on board as our chief product officer of the combined businesses, and Patrick as our chief strategy officer, and Pete Zotto is now MD, is leading the pricing team. He was the head of revenue for the combined businesses previously at ProfitWell. So, I hope we've taken the best of both. And of course, that's still a challenge to work out day to day because people have different history and they have different memories and they have different ways of doing things. And it's all about making sure, especially as we enter 2023, that we leave 2022 behind us, take the best bits from it, and make sure we're all together in the same room pathing that future.
So far, it seems it works great. I'm happy for you. And
when did you join I appreciate Paddle?
When did you join
Paddle?
Yeah,
so I joined in January 22. So I've been in Paddle just over a year now, although I was doing about 5 months of advisory work beforehand as a contractor, as a consultant, helping them with their marketing. So I was there before the ProfitWell journey started and that conversation started. And it's been a fantastic ride for the last year and a half, almost 2 years. But I'm enjoying every day, and I certainly seem to have joined at a good time. So I'm loving working with my colleagues here.
Awesome. And what has been your best growth tactic for gaining new people for Paddle?
What has been our best growth tactic? Before joining Paddle, I advised 15 or 16 different SaaS businesses on their go-to-market. And when we talk about growth tactics, I usually dodge that question and come back to the fundamentals, because often it's the fundamentals that are the problem. So number one, is there a message that resonates with a defined group of people? And that overall strategic narrative, the message you're telling to the market, for me is really critical. And we've definitely made some changes on that front. Then the second piece is, do we deeply understand our target customer? Have we made hard decisions over how small our target universe should be? And have we gone through the hard process of identifying our target accounts? And so honestly, I think the best growth tactics that I've experienced at Paddle have, number one, been making sure we have a deep understanding of our target market and output better target accounts to serve our sales team. Secondly, that we have a message that really cuts through and helps differentiate us. And then thirdly, building a team of specialists that can manage the various different tactics that execute against those target accounts with that message that matters.
Fantastic. And what are the marketing trends that you see in the near future?
So, one thing that feels a little bit obvious, but certainly is something we're exploring and we're doing a lot of is face-to-face, is field marketing again, getting back in the room post-COVID. I think there's a real need and a real desire for people to be back in the room talking. We'd love to come and do that over in Romania. Recently, we've done it in Paris and in Barcelona, in Amsterdam, in London, in New York, in Boston, in Austin. So we've got a whole range of those kind of founder dinners that we run with go-to-market leaders and founders from SaaS companies, where we just show some of our data on growth and retention and pricing trends, have a conversation with local founders. And that's yielded some really good conversations over the last few weeks. So it doesn't feel like a new or very trendy tactic, but we're really enjoying being back in the room.
That's a great mindset, yeah. And you said you had advised a lot of SaaS companies with their go-to-market. I was curious to know the top 3 mistakes that they make, in your opinion.
So, I mean, I've already mentioned it, but the least optimized piece of most of their marketing engines was the message. There was just people trying tactics, throwing things, doing new campaigns without a central understanding of the message that really cuts through. And when we think about that message, I think there are a bunch of frameworks, and if it's interesting, we can link to some of these in the show notes from this. There's a bunch of frameworks that I use in that environment, all borrowed from other people, none of them made up by myself. But at the core, they really have a sense of what is this ideal future that the customer wants, and how can we make sure that the customer understands and believes in that ideal future? And then secondly, what's the reframe? What's the way that we can help the customer reframe this problem? That if they believe us and reframe in that way, then we're the only, the primary option that they want to choose. And so, I think thinking through that deeply and then doing that with your customers has been one of the biggest challenges that I've seen in most of those businesses I've worked in.
And what has been your biggest personal challenge since joining Paddle?
Yeah, so I mean, there's been lots of challenges. I definitely see them as opportunities. I think one of my challenges at joining Paddle is I live outside London, about 200 miles away from London, and I've got 2 young kids and my wife down here in Devon, and I really wanted to make sure that I was present with the team that was mostly London centric. So I really tried to make sure I was in the office very often, that I was over in the US meeting people in our New York office or our Boston office or going down to Salt Lake City. And so that was a challenge to balance. And so I think that was a something personally that was a challenge. When it comes to more of the role, I think we mentioned target accounts already, but Paddle had a pretty good understanding of its target market. But it took me probably 6 months of being in role to understand that complexity in depth, and then make sure that we had a plan to go and fix it. And honestly, when we think about demand generation as an engine, if we're pouring bad fuel in the top of that, you're never going to get good results.
What SaaS events will Paddle be joining this year?
Well, we'll be at SaaStock in Dublin again, which I know you met some of the team over there, which is great. We love SaaStock. We'll be at SaaStock in Austin as well, over in the US at the end of May. We'll also be sponsoring SaaSta in London, SaaSta Europa, and SaaSta in California, the SaaSta Annual. So those are our 4 big events of the year. And then, as I said, we're hosting a whole bunch ourselves as well. Our first half-day summit will be over in Austin in early May, and then we'll be doing something similar probably in Boston and London as well. So yeah, we'll be all over the place, but SaaStock and SaaSta are our main events of the year.
Where can people find the local events?
So probably best just to reach out to me or one of the team, because a lot of them we don't overly promote publicly, just because we try and keep the list really tight and the type of people in the room really senior. But if anyone here is leading go-to-market or is on the senior team of a software business, we would love to see you at one of those. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'll make sure I hook you up.
And you're one of the biggest sponsors of SaaStock, right? I think last year you're the second biggest one or something.
Oh,
if I
I'm
remember
not entirely
correctly.
sure of the size of sponsorship. We really measure it by the amount of impact we get out of it. And we certainly feel we punch above our weight on that front. So, yeah, we go big. We were running evening events and morning events and hosting podcast recordings at the booth. And we had a swag store, as you saw. So, yeah, we always
Yeah,
make sure that we show up strong.
I think Bianca, your colleague, your head of brand, explained to me that 4 years ago she suggested that they should sponsor SaaStock, and after acquiring a big client, like big, one of the biggest clients, they decided that they should do it every day and not look at the results of that because that client was paying for the next 4 events or something. So
Yeah, I know
I don't know
exactly
if
which
you're
client she's
familiar.
talking about.
Okay. Okay, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I love to hear your backstory in detail because you have a lot of experience and yeah, please tell
Yeah,
us.
I was hired on part of Deloitte Consulting scholarship program when I was 17. It was about 15 people in the UK that got selected for this program. I joined their technology, media, and telecoms team before university in their audit team and then in their strat consulting team. But really, that year of work experience before university made me want to go to uni to graduate into my own job rather than having to take the Deloitte job at the end. I enjoyed my time there and I worked for them every summer and every winter while I was studying. But I wanted to have some options outside of that and I really wanted to be in a smaller business. So at university, I started multiple businesses. Most of them failed miserably. One of them ended up in court. But by the end of my university course, end of those 3 years, we had a business that was doing social media analytics for a whole load of top brands in London. But at the same time, I met the co-founder of the business that we ended up growing, raising money for, and selling, called Idio, which was an AI-based personalization engine for big B2B tech companies. And for years afterwards, we grew that very slowly, made every mistake in the book, raised money from a bunch of different funds in Europe, and then ended up selling it in 2019. And through that journey, we then we were sell side once, then buy side 4 times in 2 years, as the company we sold it to bought a lot of other assets. So we then suddenly had experience in a much larger company. And then, as I said, one of the things that I'd agreed with my board through that process was that I'd be able to do some contract work on the side to really broaden my experience and make sure I was continuing to learn. And so, yeah, I've done that for a while, and then also been a tutor for the ABM course and the Analyst Relations course at the Sales Impact Academy, and done a few other things too. So I'm very much an always-on learner, and I love seeing into different company environments where I can see their challenges and problems, and maybe use some of the frameworks I've seen work before, but most of all, understand and learn more about how it plays out in a specific market.
And I know you're passionate about startups. What's your best piece of advice for startup founders?
I just do it. I've got several founders that I'm working with right now, and one of them particularly is a real perfectionist, and he wants everything to be perfect before it's live. So I think founders normally have a bias for action, so this isn't good advice for many. But for those who want to make sure that things are perfect before they get live, I just think getting in front of the customer and having that conversation is absolutely, it is the lifeblood of a startup, getting that feedback. And so, yeah, I think it's just a case of getting out there and doing it and not being scared of failure, not being scared of people saying no, not being scared of it not being right yet.
And do you see yourself more of a founder or as a marketer?
Oh, I'm not sure either of those I carry true to my identity. I'm a husband and a father first. Hopefully a friend
So
of
you
a few
prefer the
people too.
personal part?
And so in a business
Yeah.
context, I think that's a great question. I don't think I've ever necessarily divided one or the other. I was a founder before I was a marketer. I kind of happened into marketing by taking over the marketing function and building it at Idio, and then carried that role through again. And I'm sure after Paddle, I'll be starting another business at some point, several years in the future, once we've made a good run of this and kind of taken this to its natural conclusion. So I think maybe the next role will define what the answer is to that.
That's awesome. And I have one last question. What's your favorite software apart from Paddle and ProfitWell?
Well, would it be 2023 if I didn't say that I'm spending lots of time with ChatGPT? I think the application of generative AI is super interesting. So yeah, I'm certainly having fun with that now. Just before this, I was preparing for a webinar with Forrester Research that we're delivering in a couple of weeks' time. And a couple of weeks ago, we launched a rocket into space to it was a fun campaign.
I saw.
Okay, you saw it, great. Yeah. So we're doing this Forrester webinar is off the back of that space campaign about internationalization, taking your business global. And so I was there on ChatGPT pulling space jokes and space puns ready for it. So I love having that co-pilot in my work.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to tell us today on the podcast?
No, just if there's anything that we can do to help, and it doesn't have to be about billing or payments or pricing, if there's anything that myself or my colleagues can do, we genuinely believe that we win if the SaaS industry wins. And so we want to help out any way we can. We're all happy to jump on a call, a chat through, go to market issues, team issues, fundraising issues. So if I can ever help, just reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'd love to help.
Thank you so much for this, and I'm really grateful for meeting you and for being on the show. Thank you.
No, great to meet you too. Thanks so much.